The galaxy was silent, but inside the mistress's palace, the air was heavy with secrets. The alien mistress was known across 1,000 worlds, feared by her enemies, admired by her allies, and obeyed by all who stood in her shadow. She was not like other rulers. She did not need soldiers or armies to guard her treasures. She had only one protector, a human bodyguard. The bodyguard was not strong like alien beasts, nor did he have the sharp claws of reptilian hunters. He was an ordinary man by human standards, but to the mistress, he was something more. He was loyal, brave, and stubborn, and above all, he never broke his word. That was why the mistress kept him close, and why she trusted him when others thought it foolish. But on this night, things were different. The mistress walked into the treasure hall, her long cloak flowing like black fire. Her eyes glowed faintly, cold as the stars, and behind her stood the bodyguard, watching carefully. Without a word, she waved her hand, and the room changed. The walls opened, and the shelves of treasures revealed themselves. Golden relics, glowing stones, weapons humming with hidden power, and crystals that whispered like voices from forgotten worlds. The human stared, his heart pounding. These were treasures worth more than entire planets. These were objects men would kill for, objects kings and warlords would start wars for. And yet, the mistress did something unthinkable. She stepped back, turned her face toward him, and said softly, "I will leave them here, unguarded." The bodyguard frowned, unsure if he had heard her correctly. He looked again at the shining relics, then back at her. "Unguarded?" he asked in disbelief. The mistress smiled, a strange smile that never reached her eyes. "Yes, unguarded. I will see what happens." He felt a chill run through his body. Why would she risk everything? Her enemies were everywhere, waiting for a single mistake. If word spread that her treasures were unprotected, the galaxy would burn with greed. Yet here she was, calm and still, as if this were only a game. "Why?" he whispered, but she did not answer. Her gaze was sharp, heavy, and unreadable. It was as if she could see into his soul. Then she turned and walked away, her steps fading into the darkness. He was alone, standing in the great hall of treasures, and all around him the relics glowed brighter, as if they had been waiting for him. The silence pressed against his ears, broken only by the soft hum of alien power. He stepped closer, his eyes drawn to a crystal that pulsed with blue light. For a moment, he thought he heard a whisper, a voice, soft and tempting, speaking in a language he did not know, yet somehow understood. "Take me, hold me, I am yours." He pulled his hand back quickly, his breath sharp. No, he told himself. He could not touch, he must not touch. But the longer he stood there, the stronger the pull became. Each treasure seemed alive, each one calling him in a different way. One promised strength, one promised wealth, another whispered freedom. Visions flashed in his mind, him standing tall, leading men, commanding fleets, owning the stars themselves. It felt so real that he almost reached out again. He closed his eyes and shook his head. No, he reminded himself. He had made an oath. His duty was to protect, not to steal, not to betray. He had faced death for the mistress, faced creatures twice his size, and machines that could break bones with one strike. But this silent temptation, was more dangerous than any weapon. Still, he could not stop the question in his mind. Was this truly about guarding treasures? Or was this something more? Was this a test? The mistress had always been strange, always playing games of power, always watching, even when she seemed far away. Was she watching now? Hidden in the shadows, waiting to see what he would do? The thought made his skin crawl. He looked around. The vast chamber, but there was no sign of her, only the endless rows of glittering relics. And yet, he felt her presence, like a shadow on his back. Time passed slowly, each minute stretching like an hour. The air grew heavier. the whispers of the treasures louder. The bodyguard clenched his fists, fighting against the urge that burned inside him. He remembered Earth, the streets where he grew up, the hunger, the struggles, the people who laughed at him for being weak. With one treasure, all of that could change. He could return not as a soldier, but as a king. But then another thought came. If he took it, if he betrayed her trust, the mistress would know, and she would not forgive at last. He sank to one knee, pressing his hand against the cold floor. He whispered to himself, "I am not here to steal. I am here to protect." The words steadied him, but his heart still raced. This was no ordinary night. This was the beginning of something greater, and though he did not yet understand, he felt it in his bones. The mistress had set a trap, not for her enemies, but for him, and the true test had only just begun. The hall was too quiet, the silence heavy like chains. The human bodyguard stood in the middle, surrounded by treasures that should not exist, treasures that belonged to. Ages before Earth even learned to write words, he felt like an intruder in a dream, every step echoing, every breath watched by invisible eyes. The mistress had vanished, yet her shadow lingered. He knew she was not far. Even if she had left the hall, she always found ways to see without being seen. That was her nature, never showing her full hand, never speaking without a hidden meaning. And tonight, she had left her treasures exposed, daring him to prove who he really was. The glow of the relics grew sharper, colors bending and twisting as if the treasures themselves were alive. Each object seemed to reach into his mind, whispering promises, playing with his memories. He saw visions himself wrapped in armor made of fire, leading soldiers of light, his name carried across the stars. Another relic showed him Earth, peaceful and united under one flag, a human flag, with him standing as the one who had made it possible. And another offered something simpler, something his heart ached for, the chance to go home, to live in peace, to be free from war. He clenched his fists, his nails digging into his skin. It was not real. He told himself they were only tricks, but the whispers grew louder, overlapping, thousands of voices calling out, each one trying to bend his will. The treasures were not silent riches. They were hungry, each one wanting to be chosen, each one wanting to bind itself to him. He stepped closer to a weapon resting on a pedestal. It looked simple, like a blade, but the air around it bent and shimmered, as if reality itself feared its edge. When his eyes lingered, the weapon spoke in his mind. With me, no enemy can harm you. No war can defeat you. No mistress can control you. His breath caught, because the thought was tempting, too tempting. What if he did not need to serve anyone? What if he became his own master? Then another relic glowed, a golden sphere floating gently above its stand. It pulsed like a heart, and he felt warmth in his chest. Visions came, children laughing, his family smiling, Earth safe, free of hunger and war. It promised not power, but peace. His eyes burned, because deep inside, that was all he ever wanted. The chance to protect not just one mistress, but an entire world. But then a darker vision swept across his mind. He saw the mistress herself, standing over him, her eyes cold, her voice sharp. "You are nothing but a pawn." The vision whispered, "She does not trust you. She only uses you, and when your purpose is done, she will throw you away." He staggered back, heart racing. Was that true? Was this entire night not about loyalty, but about control? His pulse thundered in his ears, his body torn between desire and duty. Every treasure called to him differently, some with promises of glory, others with promises of freedom. But one, in particular, grew stronger, louder, clearer, a crystal the size of his hand, glowing red like a living ember. When he looked at it, the whispers of the other relics fell silent. The crystal spoke alone, its voice soft but commanding. "You are meant for more. Take me, and I will make you more." He stepped forward, his hand shaking, his heart screaming. the glow of the crystal reflected in his eyes, and for a moment he imagined it already in his grip, power rushing through him, his body unbreakable, his mind unstoppable, his future his own. The mistress's shadow could no longer reach him. He would be free, and he would be feared. But then he froze. A sound soft, distant broke the silence. It was not the hum of a relic, not the echo of his breath, but something else. Footsteps, faint but growing. Someone else was here, moving through the palace, drawn by the open treasures. His heart dropped, because now he understood. The mistress had not only left the treasures out for him, she had left them as bait, and now predators had arrived. The human drew back quickly, his instincts on edge. The whispers of the treasures did not stop. They grew louder, desperate, urging him to take them before the intruders arrived. But he knew the truth. If he took one, if he gave in now, the mistress would know, and worse. The intruders would know too. They would not see a bodyguard. They would see a thief, a traitor, and they would tear him apart. He crouched low, pressing his back to the wall. The footsteps echoed closer, sharp and heavy. Shadows flickered across the far end of the hall. Alien shapes with long weapons. Hunters, ruthless scavengers who had tracked the mistress for years, waiting for a mistake, and tonight she had given them one. The bodyguard's breath was steady but fast. His mind screamed to run, but his body did not move. This was the moment he had feared, the moment when loyalty and survival clashed. If he fought, he might die. If he took the treasure, he might live, but lose his honor. He could almost hear the mistress's voice whispering in his head, "Let us see who you really are." The hunters spread out, their eyes scanning the hall, their weapons aimed. The treasures glowed brighter, as if mocking him, daring him to act. The bodyguard tightened his fists, feeling the pull of the crystal one last time. And then, in the silence before the storm, he made his choice. Not yet, not now. He would not be their pawn. Not the hunters, not the treasures, not even the mistresses. He would fight with his own strength, no matter the cost. The hall trembled as the first hunter stepped forward. The bodyguard's heart was steady now, his eyes sharp. The mistress had set her test, and fate had answered. The treasures could wait, but the battle had already begun. The hall of treasures was no longer silent. The air vibrated with the sound of boots striking the floor, the clink of alien weapons, and the low growl of voices speaking in harsh tones. The human bodyguard pressed his back against a pillar, his heart steady but his eyes sharp. He had faced danger before, but this was different. This was not a duel or a simple attack. This was a trap, carefully set, carefully timed. The hunters entered slowly, their shapes tall and twisted, their armor made of black plates that reflected the glow of the relics. Their weapons pulsed with strange light, humming with deadly energy. They were not simple thieves. These were professionals, killers who had stalked the mistress across galaxies. They moved like predators, silent but certain, their heads turning, scanning every corner, searching for prey. The bodyguard stayed low, his breath quiet. He could smell them now, a metallic stench mixed with smoke and dust. His muscles tensed, waiting for the right moment. He knew he could not run. The treasures would not allow it, and the mistress would never forgive it. He had to stand. He had to fight, even if the odds were against him. The hunters spoke to each other in their tongue, their voices cold and sharp like knives. He could not understand the words, but he understood the meaning. They knew the treasures were here. They knew the mistress had left them unguarded, and they thought the hall was theirs to plunder. But then one of them stopped. The leader, taller than the rest, his armor marked with glowing scars. His eyes swept across the hall, and they landed on the human's shadow. The bodyguard knew he had been seen. There was no more hiding. The leader raised his weapon, a spear of light crackling with energy. The hunters spread out, their steps echoing like thunder. The bodyguard stepped from the shadows, his fists clenched, his body calm. He had no glowing weapon, No alien armor, but he had something else. He had training, he had will, and he had nothing to lose. The first hunter lunged, his blade slashing down. The bodyguard dodged, fast and sharp, rolling across the floor and striking low. His fist slammed into the hunter's knee. The alien roared, stumbling, before the weapon could strike again. The human grabbed the alien's arm, twisted, and drove the blade into the floor. The hall shook with sparks as energy tore into the stone, but the fight was not over. Another hunter fired a bolt of green light, the blast tearing past his shoulder and scorching the wall. The bodyguard dropped flat, feeling the heat burn the air above him. He rolled forward, grabbed a broken piece of armor from the floor, and flung it like a knife. The sharp edge cut across the hunter's face. Not deep, but enough to make him roar in fury. The hall was chaos now, weapons striking, light flashing, treasures glowing brighter as if feeding on the violence. The human moved like a shadow, striking, dodging, vanishing, reappearing. He was fast, faster than they expected, but still. He was outnumbered, and each attack grew heavier, sharper, closer to ending him. A spear of energy cut across his side, leaving his skin burning. Pain shot through him, but he did not stop. He grabbed the weapon, yanked it forward, and drove his elbow into the hunter's throat. The alien choked, fell back, but another rushed in to take his place. The bodyguard's lungs burned, his body bleeding, his strength pushed to its limit. And then, for a moment, his eyes flicked to the red crystal on the pedestal. It glowed brighter, louder, calling to him, "Take me, and they will fall. Take me, and you will not die." His heart trembled, because the thought was tempting, too tempting. But he gritted his teeth and turned away. "No," he whispered, "not yet, if he took it." He would not be fighting for himself anymore. He would be fighting for the treasure, and that was not who he was. He ducked as a blade cut across the air. His hand grabbed the hunter's wrist, twisted, and with a sharp kick, he sent the alien crashing into a pedestal. The pedestal cracked, the relic above it hummed, and for a moment, the hall shook with a wave of strange energy. The hunters hesitated, their eyes wide. The treasures were alive, watching, waiting, judging. The human used their hesitation. He leapt forward, striking hard, using his fists, his elbows, his knees. He was not the strongest, but he was relentless. Each strike was sharp, each movement precise, and slowly, painfully, he forced them back. But then the leader stepped forward again. His spear burned brighter, the hum shaking the walls. He looked down at the human and growled in a voice thick with contempt, "You are only a man. You cannot stand against us." The human stood tall, his chest heaving, blood dripping from his side, but his eyes were steady, his voice sharp. "Then come and see," the leader charged, the spear cutting through the air like lightning. The human dodged, barely, the weapon grazing his arm. Burning flesh, he lunged forward, grabbing the shaft of the spear, twisting with all his strength. The leader roared, pulling back, but the human did not let go. He drove his shoulder into the alien's chest, forcing him back, step by step, and with a final shout, he wrenched the weapon free. The hall went silent for one heartbeat. The human stood, holding the alien weapon, its light burning in his hands. The hunters froze, their eyes wide, their leader on the floor, beaten. And in that silence, the treasures glowed brighter, their whispers louder. The human bodyguard had proven himself. But the test was not over. Far above, hidden in the shadows, the mistress watched with eyes that burned like fire. She did not move. She did not speak. But in her silence, there was a smile. The bodyguard had survived the first challenge, but survival was only the beginning. The real trial was still to come. The hall smelled of smoke and blood. The hunters were gone, their bodies broken, their weapons scattered across the stone floor. The human bodyguard stood in the middle, his chest heaving, his side burning with pain. his hands still gripping the alien spear. The treasures glowed brighter now, their light flickering like fire in the dark. It was as if they had watched the battle, as if they had fed on it, as if they had been waiting for him. He dropped the spear to the floor, the sound echoing like thunder. His body shook with exhaustion, his arms heavy, but his mind restless. The fight was over, yet the danger was not gone. The danger now was silent, invisible, creeping into his thoughts. The red crystal pulsed on its pedestal. Brighter than before, it called to him, louder, sharper, filling his mind with whispers. You are strong, stronger than you know. You do not need her. You do not need anyone. He staggered, clutching his head, the voice soft but heavy. It was not like the voices before. This one knew him. This one spoke directly to his fears. He closed his eyes, but visions flooded in. He saw the mistress standing above him, her eyes cold, her voice sharp. You are only a pawn, she whispered. You bleed for me, you fight for me, and when I am finished, I will leave you behind. His chest tightened, because the words felt true. He had followed her across galaxies, into battles no human should survive. But had she ever told him why she trusted him? Had she ever told him the truth? The visions shifted. He saw himself holding the crystal, its power surging through him, the hunters falling with one strike, worlds bowing at his feet, Earth safe, humanity rising above the stars. He stood not as a guard, but as a king. The mistress was gone, her shadow erased, and for the first time he was free. He opened his eyes with a gasp, his hands shaking. No, he whispered, this is not real. But the crystal pulsed again, a voice, soft and mocking. It is real if you choose it. His heart pounded. Was this why the mistress had brought him here? Did she know the treasures whispered? Did she know they tempted him with visions of betrayal? Was this her true test? Not loyalty, not strength, but obedience? He felt anger rise in him, sharp and hot. Had she ever trusted him at all? Or was he only a tool, a human puppet standing between her and death? He thought back to the battles, the sacrifices, the wounds that never healed. Every time he had fought for her, every time he had stood between her and danger. But what had she given him? Not answers, not trust, only silence and orders. He clenched his fists, his teeth grinding. The whispers grew louder. She does not see you as a man. She sees you as a weapon. He staggered toward the pedestal, each step heavy. The crystal glowed like fire, shadows dancing across the walls. His hand hovered over it, his skin tingling with heat. If he touched it, he would know the truth. If he touched it, he would have the power to stand equal. But deep inside, another voice, his own voice, whispered against it. If you take it, you will never return. You will not be you anymore. His hand shook, his breath sharp, his heart split between duty and desire. Then, in the silence, another sound echoed. Soft footsteps, calm and steady. The mistress had returned. She stepped into the hall, her cloak flowing, her eyes glowing faintly. She looked at the broken hunters, at the shattered pedestals, and then at him, her face unreadable, her voice soft. You survived, she said, almost as if it surprised her. He did not answer, his hand still hovering over the crystal. Her eyes flicked to it, then back to him, and then she smiled, a strange, dangerous smile. Go on, she whispered. Take it. His chest froze. The words hit him harder than any blade. She was not stopping him. She was daring him. She wanted to see if he would betray her. She wanted to see if he would choose power over loyalty. And in that moment, he realized the cruel truth. This was never about the hunters, never about the treasures. This was about him. She had set this stage, drawn the predators, left the treasures bare, all to see what he would do when temptation whispered in his ear. Why? He demanded, his voice hoarse. Her eyes glimmered, sharp as knives. Because loyalty without temptation is worthless, she said. What use is a bodyguard who is only loyal when there is nothing to gain? Her words cut deep, because they were true but cruel. She had not trusted him. Not truly. She had only tested him, again and again. And now she was waiting, watching, to see if he would fail. The whispers of the crystal grew desperate. She mocks. She uses you, take me, and you will be free. His hand trembled, sweat dripping from his brow. The mistress tilted her head, her smile still sharp. Go on, she repeated. Show me who you really are. The hall shook with silence, his choice hanging heavy in the air. If he touched the crystal, he could rise, he could rule, he could break free. But if he did, he would betray his oath, betray himself. If he turned away, he would remain her pawn, always under her shadow. Either choice felt like chains, and in the mistress's eyes he saw no pity, only hunger for the truth. He pulled his hand back slowly, his breath ragged. I am not your pawn, he whispered, his voice low but sharp. The mistress's smile faded, her eyes narrowing, the crystal dimmed, its whispers fading to a hiss, and for the first time the hall felt colder, heavier. The test was not over, it had only deepened. For the mistress now knew his loyalty was strong, but his doubt was stronger. And doubt, once planted, does not die. It grows, it twists, it whispers. And the human bodyguard realized with a chill, the true battle was no longer against hunters or blades. The true battle was inside his own heart. The hall had grown colder, the glow of the treasures dimming, as if the walls themselves were listening. The bodyguard stood frozen, his hand still trembling for where it had almost touched the red crystal. The mistress stood across from him, silent, her eyes burning like distant stars. For a moment, neither spoke. Only the sound of their breathing filled the vast chamber. Finally, she moved, her cloak whispering across the floor. She walked past him, past the broken hunters, and stopped in front of the pedestal. The red crystal pulsed as if waiting for her hand, but she did not touch it. She only stared, her face calm. But her eyes were sharp, wary, as if she feared it. The bodyguard noticed, his chest tightening. You don't touch them, he whispered, his voice low. The mistress's lips curled into a thin smile. Clever, she said softly. You finally see. He frowned, his eyes flicking to the endless rows of glowing relics. They are yours, he said, yet you never touch them. Why? The mistress's gaze lingered on the crystal, her hand hovering close, but not close enough. Because I cannot, she said, her tone steady but cold. Her words struck him harder than any blade. He took a step closer, disbelief heavy in his chest. You cannot? The mistress turned to him, her eyes unblinking. These treasures, she whispered, are not mine to claim. They were never meant for me. Her voice was sharp, like a blade slicing through silence. They belong to no alien, no empire, no creature born among the stars. They were forged for another. They were forged for you. The human froze, his breath caught in his throat. For me? He whispered, shaking his head. No, she said. Not only for you, but for your kind. She stepped closer, her shadow long and heavy. They respond to humans, not to us. Your hands can hold them. Your will can shape them. Your heart can unlock their power. Mine cannot. The bodyguard's stomach twisted, so that was why she had kept him close. Not because of loyalty, not because of trust, but because she needed him. You use me, he whispered, his voice sharp. The mistress tilted her head, her expression unreadable. I test you, she corrected. I need to know if you are strong enough, because if you are not, then no human is, and if no human is, then my empire is doomed. Her words rattled inside his chest. He wanted to argue, wanted to deny, but her eyes held no lie, only cold truth. The treasures pulsed brighter, as if confirming her claim. He remembered how they had whispered, how they had called to him, and how they had ignored her completely. It was true. Only he could hear them. Only he could feel their weight. But the truth was poison, because now he knew without him, she was powerless. Without him, she could not control the treasures. Without him, she could not unlock their secrets. She had made him believe he was only a guard, but in truth, he was the key. Anger boiled in his chest, sharp and bitter. All this time, he whispered, "You never told me." The mistress's eyes narrowed. "Would you have believed me?" she asked, her voice sharp. "Would you have stayed if you knew you were more valuable than the crown on my head? Or would you have run, like every other man who dreamed of freedom?" Her words cut deep. He did not answer, because he did not know. He had served her faithfully. He had bled for her, nearly died for her. But if he had known from the start that she needed him, truly needed him, would he have stayed? Or would he have taken the treasures for himself? The whispers of the crystal returned. Louder now. "You see the truth. She fears you. She needs you. Without you she is nothing." His heart pounded, because the whispers were right. For the first time, he held power, not the kind that came from weapons, not the kind that came from strength, but the kind that came from truth. The mistress needed him more than he needed her. She stepped closer, her eyes fixed on his. "You are angry," she said, her tone calm but heavy. "Good. Anger is strength. Use it. Let it sharpen you. But do not mistake truth for betrayal. I did not lie to you. I only waited until you were ready to see." "Ready?" he hissed, his fists trembling. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "You are the only one who can claim them, the only one who can wield them. The treasures do not whisper to me. They whisper to you. They test you, not me. And if you fail, if you take them for greed, if you betray yourself, then humanity is lost before it ever begins." Her words filled him with dread. It was not only about him, it was about all humans. The treasures had chosen his kind, and if he failed, if he proved unworthy, then perhaps the treasures would never allow another chance. The weight of an entire species pressed on his shoulders, heavier than any weapon. But still, doubt gnawed at him. Had she kept this secret to protect him or to control him? Was she guiding him or using him like a piece on her board? Her eyes gave nothing away. Her smile was sharp, her silence louder than any scream. The treasures pulsed again, their glow filling the hall. The whispers swirled in his mind, louder, stronger, pulling him in different directions. "She uses you," one voice hissed. "She protects you," another whispered. "You are her pawn. You are her equal." The voices clashed, twisting his thoughts until he could barely hear his own. He dropped to one knee, clutching his head, his breath ragged. The mistress did not move. She only watched, her eyes burning with cold fire. This was her plan, he realized, not to fight him, not to chain him, but to break him from the inside, to force him to stand against the whispers, to stand against himself. The bodyguard's chest heaved, his eyes blazing. He rose slowly, his fists tight, his voice low but steady. "You should have told me," he said. The mistress's smile returned, faint and sharp. "Now you know," she whispered. "Now you carry the burden. The question is, what will you do with it?" The treasures glowed brighter, their whispers endless. The hall shook as if alive, the air thick with unseen power, and in the center stood the human bodyguard, no longer only a protector, no longer only a pawn. He was the key, but keys can open doors or break them, and the mistress knew the door he chose would decide not only his fate, but the fate of humanity itself. The bodyguard's heart was heavy, his chest rising and falling with anger and doubt. He had learned the mistress's secret. He had seen the truth. The treasures were never hers. They were his to claim, his to resist, his to decide, and yet she stood there, calm and silent, her eyes watching like a hawk, waiting to see if he would rise or fall. But fate did not give him time to think. The sound of metal boots echoed through the palace, the walls trembling with weight. From the shadows of the great doors, another wave of enemies poured in. Not scavengers this time, not simple hunters, but soldiers, armored in black steel, their weapons sharp with alien fire. They marched in lines, their steps cold and steady, their eyes burning with the promise of blood. The bodyguard cursed under his breath, his body already aching, his wounds still fresh from the last fight. His fists tightened, his breath sharpened, but deep inside he knew this was not a battle he could win with fists alone. The mistress did not move. She stood on the steps above, her cloak flowing like smoke, her eyes never leaving him. She did not call for help. She did not lift a weapon. She only whispered, "Show me." The soldiers roared and charged, their blades glowing with deadly heat. The bodyguard moved fast, dodging the first strike, his elbow crashing into a soldier's helmet. The alien stumbled, but another came, and another, blades slashing, sparks flying. The hall exploded with chaos. Steel against flesh, fire against stone. He fought like a shadow, fast and brutal, his fists breaking through armor, his knees driving into throats. But for every soldier he struck down, two more came. Blood ran from his side. His shoulder burned, his lungs screamed for air. Still, he did not stop. The treasures glowed brighter with every strike, their whispers louder, sharper, hungrier. Take us, use us, end this now. His eyes flicked to the red crystal, still pulsing. On its pedestal, his hand trembled even as he fought, the temptation burning like fire. A soldier's blade cut across his back, pain shooting through his spine. He staggered, falling to one knee, his breath ragged. Another soldier aimed a spear of light at his chest. He rolled aside, barely escaping death, but the blast scorched the floor where he had stood. He could not last much longer. His body was breaking. The crystal pulsed brighter. The whispers now screams, "Take me, and you will not bleed. Take me, and they will all fall. Take me, and you will live." His heart raced, his hands shaking. If he touched it, he could end this. He could crush them all. He could survive. But if he touched it, would he still be himself? Or would he become something else? Something the mistress wanted or feared? The soldiers pressed harder, their blades striking from all sides. One cut across his arm, another across his thigh. His blood painted the floor, his vision blurred, his strength fading. He staggered back, his body screaming, his mind spinning. And still, above him, the mistress did not move. Her voice cut through the chaos, cold and sharp. "Decide." He roared with rage, striking a soldier across the jaw, his fist breaking bone. Another lunged. He grabbed the blade with his bare hands, blood pouring from his palms as he twisted it free. He struck back, wild, furious, desperate. But it was not enough. A soldier slammed into him, driving him to the floor. The bodyguard gasped, the weight crushing his chest. The blade rose high, ready to pierce his heart, and in that instant, the crystal flared like a star. The whispers became one voice, deep and commanding. "Choose me or die." His hand stretched out without thought, reaching for the pedestal. The glow filled his eyes, his heart, his soul. For a heartbeat, he was ready to claim it, to end this fight with a single touch. But then another voice cut through the storm. His own voice, faint but fierce. "If you take it, you are not fighting for yourself anymore." He froze, his hand trembling inches away. The soldier's blade came down. With a desperate roar, he twisted, rolling aside, the blade slamming into the floor. He slammed his elbow into the soldier's throat. Shoving him back, his hand fell from the crystal, his choice made. Not yet, not now. Pain ripped through his body as he stood. His chest heaving, blood dripping from his wounds, he staggered forward, his fists raised, his body weak but his will unbroken. The soldiers circled him, their eyes cold, their weapons glowing, and still he did not touch the treasures. He would fight with his hands, with his heart, with his will. If he was to fall, he would fall as himself, not as a slave to whispers. The mistress watched, her expression unreadable, her eyes sharp. For a moment, something flickered across her face, something almost human. Was it respect or disappointment? He could not tell, but her silence spoke louder than words. This was the breaking point. If he survived, he would prove his will stronger than temptation. If he failed, he would die a man, not a puppet. The battle raged, blades clashing, fists striking, blood flowing. The human bodyguard moved like a storm, every strike desperate, every breath a struggle. He was breaking, but he was not broken. And through the pain, through the chaos, he shouted, his voice raw, "Am I your guard or your pawn?" The words cut through the hall, sharp as steel. The mistress's eyes widened. Just for a moment, for the first time, she hesitated. And in that hesitation, the bodyguard felt a spark, not of the treasures, not of alien power, but of his own strength. His fate was his will unshaken. The breaking point had come, and he had not broken. Smoke curled through the broken hall like a slow river. The human bodyguard stood with bloody hands and shaking breath, his eyes fixed on the red crystal that refused to stop whispering his name. The soldiers were silent now, the echoes of battle fading into the high ceilings. High above the steps, the mistress finally moved, her cloak falling like night around her shoulders. She descended without haste, each step measured, each breath calm. When she reached the floor, she did not look at the corpses. She looked only at him. "Enough," she said, her voice steady as stone. He tightened his jaw, every muscle aching, every thought burning. "Then speak," he growled. "Tell me the truth." She stood between him and the pedestal, the red crystal pulsing against her shadow. "The truth," she said, "is not one thing. It is a door, and you must choose how to open it." He did not move. He did not blink. He would not be led by riddles anymore. The mistress lifted her hand and swept it out, and the entire hall seemed to awake. Hidden walls slid back with a sigh, revealing 6 more pedestals in a circle. On each pedestal rested a different treasure, each one older than memory, each one alive with its own strange heart. A ring that hummed like wind under the sea, a veil that drank light and returned starlight, a shard of black glass that reflected futures instead of faces, a mask with no eyes but too many tears, a coil of silver wire that floated like it had no weight, and a book with no pages but 1,000 voices. The 7th pedestal in the middle stood empty, and yet it glowed with a soft human warmth. "These are called the Accord Relics," the mistress said, her eyes never leaving his. "They were forged before your world had a name, by hands that understood what power does to the heart. They do not obey empires. They do not obey bloodlines. They do not obey fear. They answer only to a choice." His gaze moved slowly across the circle, feeling each whisper, each promise, each threat. "Why me?" he asked, the words rough. "Why humans?" "Because your kind breaks patterns," she answered, quiet but clear. "You are fragile and stubborn, reckless and gentle. You start wars for pride and end wars for love. You are the only species that tries to become better after it wins. The relics choose the ones who can change direction while running. They chose humanity long ago, and they waited." Her words landed like thunder, yet they carried no pride, only gravity. "You cannot touch them," he said, remembering her fear, her distance, her secret. "No," she said, and the word was a blade. "I cannot. My people swore an ancient bond." We would guard the relics until the rightful hands arrived. We would test those hands, and we would accept the choice, even if that choice ended us. He stared at her, the anger inside him, wrestling with a colder feeling. A feeling that tasted like respect. Then the hunters, the soldiers, the pain, he said. This was a test. Part of it, she replied, her eyes dimming for the first time. Some I called, some came because greed smells like blood. The relics amplify desire. They draw the hungry, they expose the weak. They show me what you do when no one saves you. He breathed slowly, his hands opening and closing, not from fear anymore, but from weight. The book without pages opened on its own, and 1,000 soft voices filled the hall. They spoke not in a language, but in feelings, summer rain, a mother's hand, the taste of iron, a flag on fire, a door unlocking. The red crystal joined them, and then the ring, and then the mask, until the room pulsed like a living heart. The mistress raised her palm, and the voices softened. Listen, she said, and know the last layer. Relics are not crowns, she said. They are contracts. What you choose now will become law across the routes where starlight travels. Your choice will bind itself to my empire, to the free worlds, to your earth, to any hand that tries to take what is not theirs. He felt the blood leave his face, because this was larger than himself, larger than any battle. What choice? He asked, and the echo rang like a bell. The circle gives 3 paths, the mistress said, counting them like scars. First, you take the red crystal and the spear of light. You become power. You command fleets. You rule by fear. The relics will obey your strength until they burn you from the inside. Your people will rise fast and fall faster. Your name will be sung as a storm and cursed as a drought. Second, you reject them. You walk away. You let the galaxy devour itself. Earth stays small and safe for a while. Then a different empire arrives. One that does not test, one that does not ask. And your oceans will learn the taste of chains. Third, you place your hand on the empty pedestal. You bind a pact, humans and my empire, as equal partners. No thrones, no collars, the relics. Will enforce limits on both sides. I will bow, and so will you. And it will save many lives, and it will anger many monsters. He swallowed hard, because the third path sounded hardest, the kind that asks for pride and silence. Why would your empire accept this? He asked, voice thin from the truth it reached for. Because I lead it, she said, not with arrogance, but with weight. And because the relics will make it so, for the first time, she stepped away from the shadows of command and knelt. The mistress, feared across 1,000 worlds, knelt on the cold stone floor before a wounded human. Her voice dropped into something he had never heard from her, something like honesty, something like pain. I cannot touch them, but I can be bound by them, she whispered. If you choose the pact, I submit. My titles become guardianship, not ownership. My armies become shields, not chains. My laws will be rewritten by your first promise. The hall leaned in, every light stilled by the sight of her knee against the stone, the bodyguard's chest. Ached as if his ribs had turned to glass. He had wanted to shout at her, to call her a user, a liar, a cold hand that pushed him into fire. Instead, he stood above her and saw a ruler who feared her own power, a woman who had carried a duty older than her name. He stepped to the empty pedestal and felt warmth rise from it. Not the fever of greed, but the breath of a living oath. Visions struck him like waves. He saw Earth under stars that finally spoke its name with respect, not pity. He saw children learning alien numbers and aliens learning Earth songs. He saw ships that carried wheat instead of soldiers. And he saw pirates who hated the light of the pact. He saw himself older, with scars that mattered, not because they hurt, but because they shielded someone else. He also saw the price: betrayals by the proud, riots from the fearful. assassins who preferred chaos over rules. No path was clean, no victory pure. That is how real futures look. Ring hummed, the book breathed, the mask wept, the crystal burned, the coil floated higher. The shard of black glass tilted toward him. Each relic asked the same question with a different face. Who are you when no reward appears? Who are you when every eye watches? Who are you when the door closes and your hand still shakes? He remembered small things, not grand ones. A quiet street on earth where he once shared bread with a stranger. A broken wrist he wrapped for a boy who had stolen from him. The first time he promised to protect someone and meant it. The first time he kept that promise when it cost him. He thought of the hunters, of the soldiers, of the mistress's silence, of the moment she knelt. He thought of his own anger and how it could so easily become a throne. He looked at her, still on one knee, eyes raised, not begging, but agreeing to be judged. "Do you trust me?" he asked, and his voice was not a challenge. It was a bridge. "No," she said, and the word should have cut, but did not. "I trust the choice you make when you are tired and still choose the harder road." He laughed once, breathless, because it hurt and because it healed. Around them the relics brightened until the hall looked like a sunrise made of 7 hearts. The empty pedestal warmed under his palm, and he felt the shape of a key that had no metal, a lock that had no teeth, a door that had been waiting since. Before he was born, a soft wind rose from nowhere, carrying dust and the smell of rain. The book without pages turned to a place between words. A low thunder rolled beyond the palace walls. Like an animal waking in deep space, the mistress lifted her head, her eyes turning to the ceiling as if she could see through stone. "The harvester moves again," she said, and the word was fear and history. It eats stars, it eats promises, it eats empires that cannot stand together. I have held it off, with wars and lies, but the relics can end its hunger if we are bound as one. The bodyguard closed his eyes for one breath, and when he opened them, the hall was clear. No more whispers tugged at his spine. No more visions dragged his gaze away. There was only his hand, the empty pedestal, the kneeling mistress, the sleeping enemy between suns, and the future he would fix with a single choice. He pressed his palm down, and the pedestal answered like a heartbeat finding its rhythm. Light climbed his arm in gentle lines, not chains, but threads, not orders, but promises. The circle flared, and the relics sang without words, the song of a law that rides on starlight. The floor wrote symbols in fire beneath his feet then, cooled into lines any child could trace. The mistress bowed her head lower, and her cloak spread like a fallen night. "Speak it," the relics breathed, all 7 at once, though only 6 were seen. "Say the first promise, and let the accords bind us." He thought of power, and he let it pass. He thought of peace, and he held it carefully, like a bird with a broken wing. He thought of earth, small but brave, and of the empire, vast but tired. He found the promise that hurt just enough to be true. He drew one last breath, looked at the woman who had tested him and knelt for him, at the treasures that had tried to own him and now waited to serve a vow. He opened his mouth, and he spoke the first word of the pact, and the hall turned to light.